Let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're tackling a deeply profound, honestly kind of unsettling question. Why are wars glorified? Think about it for a second. Throughout human history, our civilization has consistently celebrated war, conflict, and military conquest. But peace? Well, peace just sort of sits quietly in the background, doesn't it? As we walk through this history today, we're going to explore the patterns, the psychology, and the deeply rooted incentives that always seem to push humanity back toward the battlefield. And look, to be absolutely clear right up front, this isn't about pointing fingers at any one nation or any individual soldier. Honestly, soldiers themselves are so often the victims of much, much larger systems. Instead, we're going to look at the undeniable evidence of human nature, systematic control, and really ask ourselves, why on earth do we elevate conflict over harmony?
Which brings us to a massive paradox. If peace is genuinely so valuable to us, why isn't there a trillion-dollar peace industry? It's a fascinating question, isn't it? Because we all claim to want peace. Literally every leader speaks of it and every citizen desires it. Yet when you actually look at where global capital flows, where all that human energy and incredible engineering are directed, there is just this massive disparity. The global economy absolutely thrives on the business of conflict, while reconciliation and harmony, well, they're mostly just left relying on underfunded hope.
Just look at the physical world around us. On one side, we've got this immense, sprawling investment in war infrastructure. I mean, we're talking massive arms expos, multi-billion-dollar defense contractors, enormous war museums, and grand military parades rolling right down our city streets. But on the flip side, where exactly is the peace infrastructure? Where are the equally celebrated, heavily funded institutions devoted entirely to preventing conflict or to peace education? They're almost nowhere to be found. We build these massive, permanent monuments to our battles, but we rarely build them for our reconciliations.
Now, this normalization of war, it definitely doesn't happen overnight. The real conflict actually begins inside the human mind, and it starts incredibly early in our lives. Just think about how children grow up today. They're surrounded by toy guns, plastic soldiers, elaborate battle sets. Think about the movies we watch, our television shows, our entire entertainment industry. We are conditioned from a very, very young age to idolize military heroes, and frankly, to view violence as the ultimate glorious solution to complex problems. War becomes this familiar, almost comforting narrative way before we even have the capacity to understand what it truly means. There's a saying, hatred is manufactured before wars begin, and it's so true. Nations don't just wake up one random Tuesday and spontaneously decide to go to war. The human mind is slowly, methodically programmed. Our media and our powerful institutions consistently, and I mean consistently, give conflict significantly more attention than they ever give peace. So by the time that first actual shot is fired, the ideological battlefield, it's already been prepped. The narrative has been set, and that toxic us versus them mentality has been deeply, deeply ingrained into the public consciousness. But how exactly is that hatred manufactured? Well, it boils down to this. Fear is arguably one of the most valuable commodities in human history. When you keep ordinary people emotionally engaged and terrified of some external threat, they become incredibly easy to divide and ultimately to control. Fear literally bypasses our logic. It makes people willing to surrender their resources, their hard-won freedoms, and even their lives. Throughout time, those in power have always understood one simple thing. A frightened population is a compliant population. They will rarely, if ever, question the drumbeats of war.
And make no mistake, this is not some modern invention. We see this all the way from the expansive campaigns of ancient empires, right through to the heavy, ubiquitous propaganda posters of World War I and World War II. From the ideological dread we all felt during the Cold War, to the jungles of Vietnam and the sands of the Iraq War. In literally every single era, almost every major civilization and power has used carefully curated narratives and propaganda to maintain public support during external conflicts. It's a completely recognizable historical pattern. The technology of war might change, sure, but the psychological manipulation of the public, that remains exactly the same.
What we're really looking at here is a massive interconnected web. Powerful institutions pull the strings of the narrative, broadcasting constant threats to a captive audience, while the massive machinery of the arms industry is just churning out weapons in the background. It forces us to recognize how these institutions benefit from the conflict. I mean, they gain immense political power, they secure huge defense deals, and they consolidate their global influence. And all the while, humanity, just everyday ordinary people, are kept totally divided, constantly arguing over us versus them, completely distracted from the unseen forces orchestrating the whole shebang.
So if you boil that complex web all the way down, it distills into a pure, undeniable economic reality. Money follows conflict, and conflict concentrates power. The global arms industry absolutely thrives on endless military spending. When we stop and consider just how much money is injected into defense contracts every single time global tensions rise, we really have to ask ourselves a tough question. Are wars actually fought to achieve lasting peace, or are they sustained to generate limitless profit? These deep economic incentives practically guarantee that true, lasting global peace remains, well, terribly unprofitable for a very powerful few. And the most tragic part? This manipulation is universal. Regardless of what borders ordinary people live behind, or what language they happen to speak, we are all being manipulated by the exact same forces. That unseen hand, the one dropping the weapons, creating the divide, it's a universal human experience. These divisions, they don't help us. They only serve to benefit centralized, powerful interests, while the everyday citizen is left pointing a weapon at their own neighbor. Which brings us to a really harsh, undeniable reality. The people who fight are rarely the people who profit. The ordinary soldiers who are sent to the front lines, the ones who endured the completely unimaginable horrors of actual combat, they aren't the ones sitting in boardrooms signing defense contracts. They aren't the ones whose stock portfolios absolutely soar the second a new conflict is announced. No, they are so often just ordinary individuals caught up in a massive, systemic machine that they have absolutely no control over, fighting and dying for the interests of those who remain safely, comfortably out of harm's way. And, of course, this expands far, far beyond the battlefield, because the people who suffer rarely make the decisions. Just think for a second about the bombed cities, the ruined landscapes, the displaced families, and the shattered lives. The civilian toll of war is always, without fail, catastrophic. Yet these families, they didn't sit in the war rooms, they didn't vote for the bombs to fall on their own homes. They are the ones who truly pay the highest price when diplomacy fails. They are the ones bearing the devastating generational consequences of decisions made by people sitting in distant, comfortable rooms. Then, the tragic cycle is finally completed when the dust settles. The people who celebrate victory often never even stepped onto the battlefield. The parades are thrown, the confetti falls, and these grand speeches are made by politicians and leaders standing safely behind podiums. They celebrate the absolute glory of the victory. But let's be real, that glory is entirely disconnected from the grim, unglamorous, heartbreaking reality of what actually happened in the dirt and the mud. The celebration of war is just an illusion, and it's crafted by those who never actually had to bleed for it. They glorify wars and weapons so humans keep killing each other. Question. Think. Choose humanity.